Hello and welcome back to WABAN, the movie and TV show podcast where an expert on the subject discusses things with somebody who's, just the average viewer. I am your host, Nim, and today I am joined by Kung Fu.
I get where you're going for with this, but the fact that all of their names are just like what they do makes it so hard to give them any more personality.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like the Seven Dwarfs kind of thing, where it's like each one is just defined by their main personality, and that's it.
Right? It's like you can't do anything more with Sleepy because he's just asleep all the time.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. That's kind of how this is. So so we watched the 77, something like that, 1977 Japanese movie House, or Hausu, as it would be pronounced in Japanese, I guess. Whatever.
Well,
I don't know. There's
the reason he brings that up is because there's two different writings of it, normal house, and then there's also it written out phonetically, Hausu.
Yeah, and it's like Hausu.
Hausu.
So some people call it house, some people call it Hausu. I don't really, whatever. So like it seems like a very generic horror movie title. It's just house. There's a haunted house. Okay. Plot wise, you hear the plot and you're just kind of like, okay, it's pretty standard, right? It's like, so 7 high school girls, I guess. I'm assuming, I guess they're in high school, go to the one girl's aunt's house to visit her, and it turns out it's haunted and there's weird stuff going on. And then they all die. That's, you hear that plot and you're like, okay, yeah, that's an average horror movie. But then you watch it.
Yeah, it's not exactly average.
There's nothing average about this movie. How would you describe this movie?
Well, first of all, it is a horror film. It is defined as genre-wise as a horror film, but it's also defined as a comedy film.
Yeah, it's a blend. It's a very huge blend of tones,
which just only adds to the ridiculousness and confusion that you experience throughout it.
Yeah, it's just difficult to describe. I feel like you have to watch it. So most of the time I'm just confused.
Oh, yeah.
Because of mostly due to just the really just off the walls, like, editing and pacing of the movie.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, something's happening, then all of a sudden this is happening now, and you're like, wait, we're transitioning to this already, and it's just kind of all over the place. So it makes for, and just throw in the fact that it's in a language that I don't speak, so then it's even more confusing.
And you're not used to reading subtitles, so.
Right, exactly. And it's like in a culture, that I'm not part of, so it's just kind of that for me at least adds to the confusion. But yeah, it's, it's almost like, I almost like don't know where to start with it, but I feel like...
Well, probably the best place to start is the characters.
Sure, yeah, okay. So
there's 7 girls.
7 girls, which are each one is like, has like a nickname, or I'm assuming they're all just nicknames and not their real names.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them are, I don't know. Anyways, and they're all like sort
Seven Dwarf style.
Yeah, right. Seven Dwarf style, where it's like your nickname is whatever your number one personality trait is, which is like what defines their character. So there's the main character, who is gorgeous. So she's not necessarily defined simply by her name. Like, I feel like that's just the name they went with, and then like she's the main character, so she does have a little bit more depth with her, and her family history is really important, you know, because she's going to her aunt's house and stuff, and she kind of, I want to say, gets possessed by the end and becomes her.
I think
aunt,
that is
like
what
by
happens,
her aunt.
yeah.
I'm guessing that's kind of what happens. But anyways, so there's her. There's her best friend, who's the first one of them that was introduced, who's Fantasy.
Right. And she daydreams a lot.
She daydreams a lot. And specifically in this movie, she fantasizes about this one guy who's she thinks is going to come and save them and stuff.
Yeah. Which...
who tries to save them and then turns into bananas, but, you know.
We'll get into that later, but I want to go off on that part. But Fantasy, I kind of like the way they utilized her because, like, you know, she's immediately defined by her having an overactive imagination, and they use that to make sure that, like, nobody believes her when she sees all this random stuff that happens.
Right, that's true, because she's the first one who witnesses a weird thing because the one girl... Mac, who's the girl who likes to eat a lot, goes missing, and then she goes to get like a watermelon because she thinks maybe Mac fell in the well or something that the watermelon is being kept in, and she pulls it up, and instead of a watermelon, it's Mac's head, and then it, like, bites her on the ass and all this, that crazy, that just the visual. Yeah, the visuals are just insane. It's just really weird, like the way it looks.
Like, it's old. So that it might just be the excuse that it's old, but the editing looks like truly terrible. Like, just like copy paste like images onto a background, basically.
Yeah, which I've done a little bit of research and I've looked at like some videos where people are talking about it. Apparently, like, part of that was the style, like the point of some of the style. Like, there's a lot of very like, I don't know. We can get into like the style and stuff a little bit later. But we can continue with the characters. But yeah, no. So like you said, that was a good framing for that character specifically because, like, people, you know, it makes sense that they wouldn't trust her as much because that's like, she's always, you know, having fantasies about weird things, you know, like, then there's Mac, which I already said was the one who likes to eat a lot. She's not in it very long because she's the first victim, but, then you have Prof, who's like the smart one, obviously, you know, you can tell because she's the one with glasses. So,
yeah.
You know.
And she wears like this weird lab coat thing. I don't even know what you want to call it. It's like a jumpsuit.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's like a more normal. See, the thing, and that's the thing is, like, I don't really know what's like normal or not in terms of like the clothing and stuff because, like, obviously it's Japanese and, like, I don't know, like, their styles are very different than like United States, so like probably so like
I watch a lot of anime. I've never seen that style of clothing before.
Yeah,
you know, maybe it's just not portrayed a lot, but I don't know.
And I mean, you also got to look at the time period it came out. Like, I mean, this was in the 70s, so maybe styles were different. And, you know, I'm assuming a lot of the animes you watch probably aren't that old. Maybe, I don't know.
Depending, but yeah.
Depending, you might be variety. So let's see, that's 4, right? That's 4 of the characters we got to already. Okay, and then there's Sweet, she's just really sweet.
Yeah. She, I don't know, offers to clean up the house while everyone else is relaxing.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And that's the only thing that I remember about her, really.
Right, and that she, like, gets killed by pillows or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm assuming she... Well, okay, so they find her clothes in the room, like, and they don't find her. And then they find a naked doll. And I'm like, if the doll's naked and her clothes are missing, did she turn into a doll?
I mean, I assume so, because, like, that whole sequence started happening when she, like, starts staring at the doll, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of these things are just very confusing. And I think it's done on that way on purpose to, like, really make you, like, kind of draw your own conclusions in a way. You're like, oh, I guess this is what's happening. I don't know.
Right.
It's really...
horror movies do it a lot where they don't give you all the answers so that, the unknown is scarier than the known kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. But I feel like, and then there's
Melody,
who's, the musician of the group, who
gets eaten by a piano for
right,
a
exactly.
very long time.
That was probably one of the most entertaining scenes of the movie.
I mean, kind of, yeah. It kept going.
Yeah. And it was just the way it was, the special effects were done was like in a weird, almost animated way, but like with like they like used blue screen and like cut her body up into pieces by using like a blue screen background, I think, and then like putting that, changing whatever. At least that's what it looks like to me. And the way it's done is just interesting. And there's like, I don't know, it's very, and her blood almost looks like cartoon blood in a way.
I mean, everything that they do is very cartoonish, right? And I guess that's like the comedy aspect of it, because she's not even eaten like normally by the piano. It's like she's like tumbling around in the piano with all her limbs sticking out in different directions and impossible angles. Like, what even is happening?
Well, the crazy thing about that scene that I found weird when I watched it was, so it starts out, she's just playing the piano for a while, and then whichever one it was, I think it's Fantasy, I think, tries to get, she's like, come on, let's go,
And she doesn't
and
stop.
She doesn't leave, and she's like, come on, and she tries to pull her off, and her fingers are like stuck playing. She can't stop playing. And it's, there's like the lights going around everywhere. It's kind of a cool, interesting visuals. And she keeps playing. And then like her fingers like kind of get like chopped off. She pulls her hands up, and her fingers are missing.
Keys like goes down and slams her hands.
Right. And you'd expect her to like scream or something, but strangely enough, she kind of like laughs, and she's just like, ha ha ha, my fingers are gone. Like,
yeah, it's
bizarre.
Weird.
I'm like, but then she puts her hand down, and then it gets chomped down, and then her whole hand is missing. Then she screams and starts freaking out. And I'm like, wait, what? So your fingers were fine, but now your hand's gone. Like, that's the part that you freak out. Like,
is that where you draw the line?
Oh, I lost my fingers. Ha ha. Oh no, my hand's gone. Whoa. But then she gets like getting chomped up, and there's like pieces of her like floating. Like her head is like floating, like watching it happen too.
Yeah.
And she's like laughing at it and like, ha ha ha. Like it's that's probably one of the most memorable scenes of the movie. It's just so, I don't even know. Anyways.
Yeah.
We can move on. Indescribable. Yeah. There's another character, the last character, Kung Fu, who is just really good at fighting. I mean, she's good at Kung Fu, probably karate, probably, whatever, just martial arts in general. They call her Kung Fu.
There's a lot of scenes where something bad's about to happen. Like, I think the first one is something like a piece of the chandelier is about to fall and step on the other girls, and music, Kung Fu music kicks in. She jumps and like knocks it out of the way, and then it's over.
Well, I think the piece of music, I recognize it. Like, I feel like I could be wrong. I'd have to look it up again, but I feel like I've heard it in like memes or something at some point.
I mean,
so maybe,
yeah.
I'll have to look into it, but it just sounded. I mean, it's hard to like pay attention to the music because of all the ridiculousness going on at the same time. Yeah. But like, because there's like, it's like the music's playing, but there's also a bunch of other noises going on, so it's hard to like it's that music. Like it's the same music every time, but
it is pretty generic too. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's like used in other things as well.
Well, what I'm guessing is that this is the origin of that music, and then but then it was like used. It was just used in memes later on.
Maybe.
That's what I would guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to look into it at some point. But
Well,
but
because
yeah,
anytime she does anything, it plays that exact music, and it's like, it's just like the most generic, like, Kung Fu Showdown music you can get.
Yeah.
So it's very memorable.
Yes, it is. And well, and like the one time, so she like uses her kung fu when like the wood is, she's like chopping firewood, the wood attacks her, she uses it, her pants fall off, so now she's just like in her underwear or whatever, and then she's just like that the rest of the movie. She's just in her like a shirt, but like in her underwear in the rest of the movie. Just like, okay,
not only that,
whatever.
After like she like fights off that piece of wood and it falls down, she's like, oh, what was that? Must be in my imagination. Like,
yeah.
what are you, a Skyrim NPC?
She goes, yeah, exactly. She's like, oh, it must have been it was an illusion. And I'm like, how is that an illusion?
You just fought off a piece of wood that was flying around at you.
Like there was in one of the other girls who said the same thing. Oh, it must be an illusion. I don't remember what it was too. I think it might have been the like hair creeping up in the bath or whatever. But like that one makes sense. It's like you feel something touching your back a little bit. You're like, oh, must have been my mind playing tricks on me. That one is a little bit more understandable. Oh, must be an illusion.
Yeah.
But like this freaking firewood attacking you and then you doing flips and kicking it away. Like, yeah, no, it's not an illusion.
Yeah, that actually happened. You can just imagine yourself doing a backflip.
So there's our amazing cast of characters.
I think the lesser ones are the aunt, who is apparently like part of the house and survives off of eating unmarried girls or what have you.
Because she was waiting to be married, but her like guy was going to come back. He went into the fight in the war. And he never returned because he died in the war. But she always thought, he's still going to come for me. He's still going to come for me. And so she's waiting. And in order to stay young for him, she feeds off of like young unmarried girls.
Right. And then there's the teacher, who is the entire time you get like short cuts of him like driving to come save them in like a little buggy. And he's basically completely useless.
Well, it's like so that's constantly this little side plot. Every once in a while they cut back to it like, oh, he's on his way. And then he gets really close and he meets that weird watermelon guy and stuff.
Right.
But then he has that scene where he's just sitting there like bananas. And then next time a few scenes later, the one woman comes and she just comes by to his car and it's filled with bananas in the driver's seat. So you're just like, oh, so that guy just came and then turned into bananas. That was his entire like plot in the movie.
I was so confused because like there's the weird watermelon guy and he's talking to him. I don't remember the conversation at all, but it was something like, what, you don't like watermelons? No, bananas. It's like, what is happening? Yeah, and the watermelon guy like turns into a skeleton and like cartoon falls apart where his skull like hangs in the air for a moment before falling with the rest of him. Like, what? Why did he just die? What happened?
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing that guy is like somehow involved with the whole like he helps the auntie out like by trying to send any girls who come their way to like send them to the house or whatever. Like I think he's somehow involved with the whole thing. Right.
That still doesn't explain why he fell apart and turned into a skeleton at the mention of bananas.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's like the word banana is like his weakness. Like he's like some sort of weird spirit or something as well, but he's defeated by the word banana being said over and over again.
That is the worst spirit ever. I'm ultra powerful. I can, summon watermelons and attack with them and eat them. And oh no, my weakness is the word banana.
Yeah, that's like worse than like your weakness being a green rock, like Superman. Yeah. Well, and then there's also the side plot of what's the main character's name? Gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
Of her new stepmom or soon to be stepmom, I guess. Wanting to like she doesn't really like her. She's like, oh, you can't replace my mom or whatever. And she goes to the house and she's like, oh, I'm going to surprise her and show up at the house and we can have some bonding time. Maybe she'll learn to like me. And then she says that in the beginning of the movie, and then it's completely dropped throughout the entire movie. You don't see her character again until the end. So it's like, I was like, what happened to her? And then all of a sudden she's there at the end after all the girls have been killed. Except for...
And the aunt has taken over Gorgeous's body.
Right. So she shows up to the house, which every scene she was in was kind of awkward to me. Like, because there's like that dramatic music that plays.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like emphasize how beautiful she is, but it's like, okay, we get it. You can stop now.
Like whenever there was a scene, like they're sitting there and like they're like slowly reaching in for a handshake and stuff. With that music playing, it almost seemed like it was supposed to be like a romantic scene, but like obviously it's not, because it's just a her trying to bond with her future stepdaughter, like before she gets married to her dad. Like, so, but it just, the way it was, it's just really awkward. I don't know how, like, it's difficult to describe a lot of these things unless you actually watch it, but it's just crazy.
And then wasn't that the scene where as soon as they grabbed hands, the lady caught on fire and she didn't react at all?
Yeah, she just burst into flames, and then it was like, all right, there you go. She's gone.
Cool, movie over.
So I guess that was part of the plan too, because she hasn't married her dad yet, so she's unmarried currently, so she can still take feed off of her. One of the final moments was interesting too. So eventually Gorgeous is like taken over or whatever. She dresses like her mother and like whatever, that whole weird thing. And she's sitting there, and Fantasy is the only one left. Fantasy lays with her and she's like, oh, now I'm safe with you or whatever. And it's like, and then it just kind of, that's when it like cuts away to like the, whatever with the other person. And it's interesting. It was interesting because it was like, I feel like that's kind of an effective ending, because it's kind of like this creepy, like, she was like taken over or whatever from what you can tell. So she's not safe, but Fantasy thinks she's safe. So it's kind of like a little like creepy ending.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, so I think one of the biggest things with this movie is just the style. Like, so in doing some research, apparently the creator, I forget his name at the moment, but the creator of this movie, the director, a lot of his ideas were supposedly ideas he asked his daughter, who's like a child at the time, what, like, if she was to make a movie, what kind of ideas would she have for a movie like this? So a lot of the ideas and concepts came from that, apparently. So, like, she, a little kid says, like, ooh, what if a girl got eaten by a piano? What, like, probably things like that, What if a girl got attacked by a bunch of pillows? Like, you think about it, you're like, yeah, that almost makes sense. So...
I mean, bold, yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting, and I feel like it could work. Because, like, children have a lot of wild imagination, weird ideas, and stuff like that, and so.
Well, yeah, because so I guess the whole point of the movie was that it wasn't like restricted by like the common rules you have you know, in movies. Like, I mean, even down to just how it's edited and cut together. Like, it does not follow any of the like typical like rules of cinema at all.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
so many of the like cuts and stuff in this movie, I was just like, what? Well, oh, what? It just because, you know, you're used to like how a normal movie is cut together
Mm-hmm.
and edited together, and then you watch this and it's like, oh, that's the transition you're going to use. Oh, okay. Like, you know, there's just a lot of really bizarre, like there were certain parts where there was like crossfades, right? Which is a normal transition in a movie. You do a crossfade, but they like, they did a freeze frame and then crossfaded into the next scene, which was just kind of awkward looking. Like, it wasn't as smooth as like a normal crossfade. So it's like, it was just like, there's just like little details like that where they like, just the way it's framed is just really weird.
It's just kind of like someone new wanted to make a movie and someone else handed them a manual and they're just like, I don't need this. Just lost it.
But I think that was sort of the point, though, is that it's not restricted by the rules, right? Mm-hmm. Which is sort of why he asked a child for advice, right? Because if you think about it, the whole idea is that a child's imagination isn't blocked by rules in the same way an adult's would be. Like, an adult is thinking of a story or trying to come up with something using their imagination. They're going to be thinking of, well, what are the rules of this world? Oh, well, what are, you know, thinking within mm-hmm. a certain constrained sort of rule book almost. Because you've grown up, you sort of, you know, that the world follows certain rules and stuff, and you know how that works, you know. Whereas as a child, your imagination is much more just fluid and just open to anything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's why he asked his daughter for ideas, because he's like, hey, that's how you're gonna get that whole like unrestricted, no rules kind of flow to the movie, is by going through the mind of a child.
I mean, when you watch the movie, it definitely does give you the idea of like, yeah, literally anything could happen in the next moment and it wouldn't be surprising.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that was, I mean, yeah. And I guess that was sort of the whole point. Yeah, I'm trying to think like what else I can really say about it. I don't know. I'm stuck between like how I feel about this movie. Because on one hand, I'm like, this is so weird. It's like, it's so bad, mm-hmm. you know? But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of good. Like, it's kind of really just the way, it's so weird and different that it's good,
this is
you
like
know?
My opinion on like the taste of like beef jerky. Like, I don't think I like the taste of it, but I'm definitely going to keep eating it.
Right. See, I disagree. I really like the taste of beef jerky, but you know, if that's how you feel about it, yeah, it's difficult. You're like, okay, was the creator of this movie a complete insane idiot, or was he a genius? I don't know. It's hard to say, you know? Like,
I love that so much. Like, I can't tell if you're absolutely brain dead or an absolute genius, but it's one of the two.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely got entertainment out of it. That's for sure. Like, mm-hmm. It's more than I can say for like a bad movie like The Last Airbender, where it's mostly just kind of boring. It's bad because it tries hard to be good, like good and serious, but just ends up being really boring and just meh, mm-hmm. you know? But this is like bad in a completely opposite direction, where it's just so balls to the walls insane that you're just like, okay, like
you really have no choice but to just hold on for the ride. Like, you don't have any time to adapt or like reason anything out because it just shunts you into the next absurd thing.
Yeah, exactly. And like so it starts off a little slow, right? So they introduce you to the characters and the fact, her family situation and that they're going to see her aunt, and they start introducing you to things. And they have this, they're traveling to see her on the bus and stuff. So they have starts off a little slow, and then you get to the house, and even at the house, it starts out a little slow. Mm-hmm. But one thing I noticed, one of the first moments where I was just like, what the hell is happening? Pretty much the whole movie, even in the beginning, it was a little, the editing and the pacing was really weird. Yeah. Even from the beginning, it was confusing. But the first really hard moment where I was just like, huh? Was the scene where the piece of the chandelier fell or whatever. Or was the whole chandelier? I don't remember. It was hard to tell. I think it might have been. And
some crystal bit of it, I think.
Yeah, and it stabbed the lizard, right? So a piece of a chandelier falls, stabs a lizard, killing it, and I think Kung Fu knocks something out of the way or whatever.
Well, okay. I think the sequence of events was the crystal shard from the chandelier fell. It was going to hit one of the girls. Kung Fu knocked it out of the way, and I think then it hit the lizard.
Okay, yeah, that's the scene, which I described that to you, and you go, okay, that sounds pretty simple, straightforward, right? Mm-hmm. A piece of, thing falls, girl knocks it out of the way, hits a lizard instead. Simple, straightforward. But in execution, the way it's cut and edited together, it is the most absurd, confusing thing ever. I didn't even know what was happening. I was like, what? Huh? What?
And it comes out of nowhere, too, doesn't it?
It comes out of nowhere. It's just kind of there's a sort of normal scene. They're just kind of walking into the house. Pacing feels kind of normal, I guess. You're like, okay, they're just kind of slowly walking to the house. And all of a sudden, pew, 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 all this cut happens. You're like, huh. And then all of a sudden, it goes back to normal. They just move on, forget about it. And I'm like, what? We're not going to talk about this scene that just happened. We're not going to
It added nothing. It just happens, and nobody acknowledges it really.
I was like, I'm sorry, what? That's just okay. We're just gonna leave that there. Which that was an interesting thing too. Is whenever some sort of action was happening, because there's a few scenes that are kind of action scenes, Mm-hmm. It was always edited so quick and weird that it was difficult to tell what was happening. There's the scene closer to the end where Kung Fu is fighting the possessed version of Possessed Gorgeous or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it was confusing to tell, it was confusing to follow. It was just kind of they were jumping to she broke through the wall or something, and then they're jumping in the air, and it was just I was just like, huh? Which is most of the movie, but whenever it's a really action heavy scene, it's just difficult to follow what's happening.
They show things so fast and cut so often that it's just I don't know what's going on, but something's happening.
Yeah. It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre for sure. Mm. So another interesting thing about the movie is apparently at the time, so this came out in 1977, which is a couple of years earlier. I think, was it 75-ish? I don't know. In the United States of America, a very, important movie was released that changed the film industry a lot. That movie was Jaws, okay? Very big movie for the film industry. Great movie. It's the movie that sort of it was known as the first blockbuster, right? And that's sort of what started the whole blockbuster thing, right?
Right.
It was the highest grossing movie of all time at the time. It also did really well in Japan. The Japanese were film companies were like, we need our answer to Jaws. We need our version of Jaws. Our movie that's sort of, and this movie was supposedly inspired by Jaws in some ways.
How?
Still not sure. I mean, I guess you could go the horror angle. Like Jaws is kind of like, creepy horror type thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. Also, this movie uses a dolly zoom, which is a technique that's used in one shot in Jaws. It's used in one shot in this movie. So there's that, which I don't know if you know. Do you know what a dolly zoom is?
I mean, I guess it's like a dramatic, like zoom in kind of thing.
Well, so it's essentially like, imagine a camera's on a dolly, which is essentially just a thing to move it back and forth smoothly. Like, It's on a dolly. It's moving back. The camera's moving backwards. So moving away from the subject or moving towards, you can do it different ways. But let's say it's moving away. And at the same time, you're zooming in so that the subject stays essentially, looks on screen the same distance away from the screen, but like it sort of distorts the perspective of like everything around it kind of in the screen. It's a really cool effect. Anyways, they use that once in here, so that's the only like Jaws influence I can find in here.
So what is the effect, like the main subject just about stays the same and like everything in the background just gradually gets farther apart?
Yeah, it like kind of shifts. Yeah. There's like one scene in this where they use it. I don't remember exactly where, but yeah, I mean, if I showed you like a video clip of it, you could see, like, if you look up like Dolly Zoom Jaws or something, you could probably see it from there. It was a technique invented by what's his name, famous director,
I believe
Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah, it was invented by Alfred Hitchcock for like Vertigo, which was in the 60s. But anyways, I think it's a cool technique. It's effective if used well. But so there's something that I think they actually directly took as an influence from Jaws, because there's a very famous shot from Jaws that utilizes that. So I think there's a hint of influence from Jaws.
Okay.
But yeah. And
I do also want to talk about the because Mac is the first one to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the very next scene after it is the auntie eating her basically and feeding her to a fish and everything, right?
Right. Well, it's implied that like the watermelon is her, like she, or like her head or whatever, or it's like kind of, yeah.
But then I don't know if it's between the next death or maybe it's just after the next death, but there's a dance scene with the aunt. Where she just like starts dancing out of joy because I guess she's finally getting nourishment after all these years or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Because she gets out of the wheel. Once Mac dies, she's able to walk, get out of the wheelchair, and then yeah.
But it was just so out of nowhere because it was just like basically right after a death scene. So it was just such a sudden and drastic shift of tone. And it was, I don't know, I just remember it being insane to me that suddenly this lady's just dancing, and I think there was skeletons back up dancing behind her and all kinds of stuff. And I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Am I on drugs?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like there are moments in the movie where it feels like it almost feels like this could be a normal movie, You're like, okay, pacing's going like well enough, like whatever. It's shot and edited like a normal movie, then all of a sudden, boom, insane scene with random weird cuts, nothing makes sense, what's going on, and then back to normal. And you're like,
yeah.
Whoa, what did I watch? But yeah, I feel like this movie would definitely be interesting to watch, like if you were high or something, like just like
it kind of feels like they made it like a normal, decent movie, And then the editor got high and like spent an hour just digging
like
around.
chopping stuff up. Yeah, that's it does feel like that sometimes. It's really I don't even know like if there's much more to say about it at this point. Like it's just insanity happens. That's there you go. So another thing is interesting. Apparently, the director, the creator of the movie, when he was a child, the atomic bombs were dropped in Japan when he was a child, and like he lost a lot of family members or whatever to it, like had died, and like he survived. I don't know if he like wasn't in the city at the time or whatever. I'm assuming. But anyways, so like that had a huge effect on him, and apparently there's some things in this movie that are supposed to be like parallels with that experience. It's difficult to find out exactly where, but maybe something with like the loss of family members. I don't know. And then obviously there's a reference to like the one guy was in the war and died years ago, and
right. I mean, I'm sure a lot of things inspired this movie, but it's so off the walls and hard to understand by itself that I don't think any outside influence could seep through to be visible in it.
Yeah, that's the thing is like it's just such a mess of everything that you're kind of like I don't know, like there were definitely parts of the movie, especially closer to the end, where I was actually really getting into it, like the suspense and stuff. But yeah, it's just a whole bizarre package that like I can see why, like it makes sense why it's like a cult classic, like it you watch it and you're like, yeah, this is going to be cult classic status, right? Like, so at the time it I guess was really popular in Japan, but critics in Japan hated it. Like they rated it really bad.
I wonder why.
And it didn't actually get a release in the US until like 2009 or something like that, like more recently. And if you look at like, IMDb and stuff, it's got good ratings. Like it's up there. I mean, people love this thing. Like I
mean, on one hand, I really don't get why. On the other hand, I completely get why.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like I said earlier, it's like, is this guy a total whack job or is he a genius? I don't know. Was he high while writing the script? Probably. Was he high while directing? Editing at literally every step of the way.
He had been high
while making this. Probably not. Like I feel like you can't make this sober. Like you can't. You just can't. Like, yeah, it's. Yeah, I don't know. It's and there are some something. Like. There are definitely certain visuals that really stuck with me. Like the girl gets eaten by the piano, chopped up, and then you cut to a shot of the piano. The piano music is still being played, and it's just her fingers floating in the air, just playing the song. That's some powerful visuals right there. Like, I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of like, there's some creepy visuals in here, I think. So it definitely has some effective horror moments. But then a lot that's just too ridiculous to be horror.
Yeah, and a lot that just isn't even horror, is just pure comedy that completely breaks the horror, and you're just back to being confused again.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, you just there's just all these different like just tones, and the thing is like, there's a lot of movies that do that where they balance multiple different tones,
Mm-hmm.
but the difference is those movies balance the tones. This there's no real balance. It's just you cut from one tone to another immediately. There's no smooth way to transition from one tone. It's just extreme tonal shifts and just extreme yep, this is happening now. Well, now this is happening. There's no like transitions are so weird in this movie. Like I
like to think of it like other movies, they have a seesaw, and they put some stuff on one end, they put some stuff on the other end, and it tilts every so often in either direction. But this movie, they just go, all right, 3,000 pounds on this side, 2 tons on the other side. There we go.
It's like
5 more tons on the other side.
Right. So there's no balancing. It's just sudden shifts of just boom. Yeah. That's I'd say that's a pretty fair description of it. I'm trying to think like what else I can say.
It's hard to explain this movie when we ourselves have a very poor understanding of it, even after watching it.
Well, like that's the thing, though, is like I understand the the basics of the plot. I understand, I have a basic understanding of everything, but then it's just there's so much just craziness and just offbeat stuff, like off the wall stuff that you're just kind of like at a loss for words. Where you're just kind of like, it's weird, and then you're like, I don't know what else to say.
I mean, I kind of get what happened, but I'm also extremely confused about it, and
yeah, it just confuses me because, again, like I said, I'm like, is it good or is it bad? Like, I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe the fact that it confuses you and makes you think about it that much means that it's a good movie. You know what I mean? Because it's like it had some sort of effect on you. You know what I mean? Like I feel like if you watch a movie and it feels like you're watching nothing because it's like boring and it's like it's just very boring, cliche, or like just average, mediocre. That I feel like is one of the worst movie watching experiences because you just end and you're like, that movie was nothing, right?
Yeah, it was just a complete waste of a few hours.
Right, but this movie isn't like that. Like this is one where like this is a movie I will probably think about sometimes. Like I'm never gonna forget this. This is something that makes you think in a
as
weird
soon as
way.
You hear that generic kung fu music, you'll think of kung fu and all her weird, sudden, and dramatically cut up, like whatever actions. I don't know what to say at this. It's just so.
I mean, she was definitely the most like useful one of the group. Like she's the only one who did anything to like fight back against what was happening, like she's like, I'm gonna fight, and then like even down to her death because like she got like taken by like that lamp thing and it was like eating her up or whatever, and then next thing you know her legs pop out of the lamp and just kick the like cat picture that they're trying to destroy and just take it out, and you're like
and I think we should be clear about this. It was just her legs.
Right, yeah. The rest of her's like eaten up, I guess. So, but her legs are still fighting back.
Somehow.
like, damn, Kung Fu, you are like, I mean, she's a badass.
True master.
I'm gonna say it.
The arts.
She's right. She's a true Kung Fu master. Like, I mean, honestly, like, screw Poe the panda. She should be the dragon warrior.
I haven't thought about Kung Fu Panda in so long.
I actually watched it recently, like I think like last week or a couple weeks ago. I don't remember, but yeah, like I watched like all three of them. So, it's actually not bad. The first one's really good. Second and third are still all right, but yeah, she's the true dragon warrior. I mean, hey. You lose your top half and your bottom half keeps fighting. That's
Glorious.
the signs of a true Kung Fu warrior. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have much else to say?
I don't have much else to think about, honestly.
Yeah. Like, I'm trying to think of all the insane stuff that happens. Like, I feel like we covered the big stuff, but there's definitely more. But it's just hard to piece because it's a constant just what's this? What's that? What's going on? Huh? Who? What?
You feel like you're at the bottom of a ditch and someone just every once in a while pours a wheelbarrow of dirt on you. It's like, what is all this?
Yeah. I mean, it's a roller coaster. I feel like it just, but like, it's very unpredictable, which is nice because like, I feel like, I mean, it's just so bizarre because of how like simple the concept is. Like, it's like a group of girls go to a house that turns out to be haunted and possessed by a demon or whatever. Okay, that sounds like there's, you know. How many stories have been told that are that premise? You know what I mean? Like a million, right? But this is definitely a unique one. But yeah, so yeah, overall thoughts on the movie.
I mean,
I feel like usually I like to sum up a movie whenever we talk about like, oh, here's my overall thoughts. Like, I thought it was this good, but my overall thoughts are, I don't know. I don't know what I think of this movie.
It truly has not given enough information about itself for me to form an opinion, despite having watched the entire movie.
Right. Like a lot of thoughts go through my head about the movie, but none of them help me determine my overall opinion on the movie. Like, it's just a lot of yeah. So
like,
that's there you go.
I feel like if we had to give it like a number out of 10, I would have to look up like some weird Greek symbol.
Yeah, you can't give a normal number. It has to be something.
I'd probably give like a theta or something. It's like
theta. It's angle. 1 theta out of 10.
Yeah.
Which, like, what does that mean? I don't know.
I mean, I know what a theta is, but I don't know what it is in this
means
content.
Out of 10. I don't know what it means when it's out of 10.
Yeah.
But that's what I give it. You know, I'm like, oh, geez, yeah. It's definitely something. It's definitely an interesting experience. So I don't know. I feel like I would recommend it. Like,
if only just to have someone to experience it with. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just like, and I did. I watched it with a few people. It wasn't just me. So we were like going off on things during the movie. We're like, what's this? We were like, what is happening now? Like, it's a good time watching with other people, I think. I would say more so than, I feel like I enjoyed it more watching it with people than I would have on my own.
Honestly, I can understand why, having watched it alone, I was just sitting there like in silence, just being like, am I dying right now?
You're like,
am I having a stroke?
You're like, am I high right now? What was in my dinner? What was that laced with?
High from an internet video.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy because it's like, as a filmmaker, somebody who's like studied the rules of filmmaking and stuff, it's hard to like the movie because it breaks every rule of like editing, filmmaking, just everything. It's like, so it just feels so wrong. But at the same time, I'm like, I was extremely entertained by it. So I don't know. There you go. 1 fade out of 10. There you go. That's our rating. That's the official WABAN rating.
Hell yeah.
We don't really give movies ratings anyways, so like we don't need to. But
yeah, but like, I don't know. Fade is still a good number for this, I think.
Yes, it is. 1 fade out of 10. Does the rating make any sense? I don't know. What do you think?
Can
just
you
like
put an
maybe
angle in out of 10? I don't know.
Yeah. So, there was something I was going to say. See, the weird thing is, like, so we never really give the movies we watch ratings, but it's always very clear what our opinions are on them. You know what I mean? There's always a very good way to sum up our opinion on it,
Yeah.
But this one, what is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't.
Knows?
It's somewhere there. I have thoughts about this movie in my brain, but none of them can be summed up in a cohesive like statement on my overall thoughts. Like it.
I mean, we could just say we're confused.
There you go. Confusion.
That's about it.
My opinion is confusion. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so that is the movie. That is Hausu, whichever you want to call it. That is, there it is. So yeah. I guess it sounds like we don't have any last thoughts on it, and we're about an hour in, and almost an hour in anyway, so about time to close. So anyways, thank you for listening. I was going to say watching, but you don't really watch a podcast. I mean, yeah, you listen.
I mean, right side is you did end up saying listening.
Listen. Thanks for listening. Thanks for whistling. Thanks for listening to WABAN. You can listen to it multiple different locations if you'd like. Oh, but before we get into that, actually, I'm just going to mention, so next week, we are going to be discussing Bojack Horseman for the final time. It is the finale. Last week we did the first half of season 6. Next week will be the second half, and that will conclude our Bojack Horseman discussion. So I'm really excited for that. So look forward to that. And then the week after that, we haven't figured out yet. We'll probably do another movie discussion. We don't have a guest lined up currently for 2 weeks from now. But if we do, then we'll figure it out. But otherwise, we'll probably decide on another movie, maybe a more conventional movie than this.
Maybe an even weirder one.
Maybe, is there an even weirder one? Probably.
I'm sure we could find one, yeah.
Probably somewhere, right. But yeah, so that'll be, so yeah, all we have planned so far is that. And then I believe the next TV show we're going to do, our decision is still the same as we said last week. And that will probably be whatever it's called, Death Note.
Right.
So the anime Death Note. So that'll be exciting if we decide to do that. Anyways, there's multiple places you can listen to this podcast. If you'd like to, you can listen to it on my YouTube channel, which is called Nim TV. That's NIM TV. There's multiple different playlists I have on there to like sort of separate the episodes out. So there's like playlists specifically for guest episodes, one for movies, and then ones to separate our TV show discussions. So you can kind of find specific things there if you'd like to do that. Also, the other locations you can listen to the podcast are a bunch of audio platforms, which is Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So you can listen to it all of those places. If you search WABAN on any of those, you should be able to find it. Also, the podcast is released every single Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to know when you can expect new episodes of WABAN, that is when. So anyways, thank you everyone for listening. I've been your host, Nim.
And I'm the goodest boy.
Goodbye, everyone.